Had to put the last remaining mule down yesterday. Broke its leg. Shame. Terrible shame. But I think I found it. Came across an abandoned village that simply must be Z. If only father were still alive. I'm resting here for the night. Tomorrow I'll begin a thorough investigation of the site. The world will know a 29th of November, 1603. After dinner, Lopez left the city. I followed, worried he might not return. I found him standing by the riverbank, lips moving as though in prayer. Not wishing to disturb him, I waited. His communion with God must have lasted through the night, and I regret to admit I fell asleep, for the next thing I knew, Lopez stood smiling serenely over me, the morning sun behind him, creating a halo. He helped me to my feet and clasped me in a strong embrace. "Truilos, I know where to find the artifact," he whispered in my ear. The new methods of agriculture introduced by the cult of Kukulkan have only succeeded in destroying more crops. First, the bee colonies collapsed. Then the cocoa crop failed. The earth is too damaged for anything but corn to grow, and the stalks are flimsy. We must take action, or Paititi will suffer a tremendous famine. This is a traditional foot plow, still used in the Andes today, even outside Paititi. Sometimes the simple ways are still the best. Oh my god, this is a penguin lawn ornament, painted and decorated and placed in a location of reverence. I shouldn't laugh, but it's so incongruous. The locals wouldn't be able to identify the animal it's intended to represent, and they certainly wouldn't be familiar with the material the statue is made from. There isn't any plastic in Paititi. I'd love to talk to whoever did this and learn why, what they think this penguin is. These ceremonial ceramic jars are used to store corn beer or chicha. The bottom of these urpu are usually pointed, to aid when pouring into smaller serving containers. Mesoamerican people used this stone as a tool for processing grain and seeds. This describes something nearby. A lone sentry stands guard over me and his harvest. Come to Lara. Born to famine, Raised in rebellion, orphaned but never alone, he rises as the sun. This Spanish document relates one of the many stories of El Dorado, the Golden One. When the first Spanish exploration ships returned home with their holds full of gold, the news spread like wildfire, and the stories got more extravagant with each retelling. Rumors of the Golden City gave birth to countless expeditions to the New World. November 30th, 1603. With a local man as a guide, Lopez, the soldiers and I set out from the city before first light. Just as well, as a terrible flu began to spread through the population. Lopez is convinced this artifact does not lie in the city itself, but somewhere just outside. I asked if it was not somewhat hypocritical to enlist the help of those loathsome people. "Do not loathe them," he said, "any more than you would these molosses. They are all creations of the Lord our God, as are we." I told him I was stunned to hear him speak in this fashion, but he took my hands and we prayed. The energy of his faith ran from him to me, until I felt the chains of doubt fall from my heart.
Onah kachimbetik humpelu yotochileti. Onah himbetik kachili. Onah himbetik bash kachi. Min kevin disal kabir kachile.
Itzamna is the son of the Maya creator god Hunabku. He was the god of education, responsible for inventing writing and books. This made him an essential figure in the development of Maya culture. He was also god of agriculture and created farming. He even presided over doctors, healing people with the help of his red-hot hand. Usually Itzamna took on a reptilian aspect, but he was also known as Kinichahau, a fire macaw, who was the patron of the number 4 and controlled drought and disease. The Paititians made peace with each other and followed Yaskar Yahweh, recently acclaimed as emperor, to a site in the mountains to begin anew, certain they will not make the same mistakes as those before them. The protectors failed and are now doomed to recover what they lost. The surging population and lack of civil planning caused the settlement many problems. Farmers clear-cut jungle to use the fertile riverbanks for their crops, resulting in a devastating flood in the first heavy rains. Overhunting forced hunters to travel ever further to find game. Several groups, each vying for a controlling interest in the settlement, debated often fiercely on the best manner of solving these problems. This is a formidable weapon. Heavy wood lined with sharp obsidian teeth. It could easily stop an unarmored enemy. And if the bloodstains are any indication, it has. This seems to represent Unuratu leading a group in rebellion. There is a near-total eclipse in the background. Bulging eyes, fangs. This is Tlaloc, the Aztec god of rain and storms. In his gentler temperament, he's also the god of water and fertility, bestowing life and sustenance. But on the other side of the coin, he's responsible for thunder and lightning, hail, and the other destructive aspects of water, including erosion, affiliating him with caves, pools, and springs. Oddly enough, he lives in a mountain. His bird is the heron, but he's associated also with animals like snails, frogs, and other amphibians. This describes something nearby. They stand back to back, two brothers in arms. I lie at the feet of the one who watches the shaded serpent. This is great. Kukulkan bid me to join the ranks of the priesthood. The pantheon of Paititians is a patchwork of several cultures. I'll need to study their rituals, their beliefs, and learn how we can use their own gods against them. The ones from across the water are devious and intelligent. I do not doubt the city will soon be united under the control of Kukulkan. In order to not upset an already delicately balanced situation, all members of Trinity will adhere to the following rules. Limit excursions in the city. If leaving the compound is unavoidable, always wear the cultist uniform. Do not carry modern weapons. Avoid direct contact with Paititians when possible. In an effort to reduce the possibility of disease entering Paititi, Emperor Shika hereby temporarily bans all citizens from exiting the city. Anyone currently beyond the city's limits will not be authorized to re-enter. Paititi is still recovering from a recent epidemic, and any other outbreaks could tip the already precarious balance. By order of the cult of Kukulkan. That black and yellow stripe across his face marks this as Tezcatlipoca, a very important god to the Aztecs. Let's see if I can remember everything he was associated with. Jaguars, hurricanes, the night winds, the night sky, earth, the north, sorcery, beauty, temptation, leadership, war, strife, interpersonal conflict in general, and of course obsidian and divination. His right foot is often replaced with a piece of reflective obsidian, which the Aztecs used as mirrors, and these mirrors figured in shamanic rituals and prognostication. Tezcatlipoca literally means smoking mirror. The city's priests, or shamans if we mean to differentiate between the heathens and those who toil in the Lord's light, were the first to come forward, the first to listen, to hear of the state of the outside world. And thereupon, several of them felt completely cheated and begged to be baptized. They reasoned rightly their worship and trust was misplaced in the traditional deities of these lands. For as one stated, if your God has brought you here, across the world, then he truly must be the most powerful, and only a fool would not bow to such a being. We will teach these shamans English, and have them teach the population of Paititi. This is Tonatiuh, the sun god and ruler of the Aztec heaven, which they called Tolan. He was literally the sun itself, the fifth one in fact, presiding over the fifth age after the 4 previous suns had perished. The Aztecs believed they had to sacrifice to him regularly, or else he would refuse to move across the sky. He was strongly associated with eagles, unsurprisingly, and was often depicted wearing their feathers and carrying weapons such as arrows and shields, or instruments specifically created for human sacrifice. A 6-point mace, cast from copper, with an embedded axe blade. We leave the city at first light, which is just as well, for a terrible disease has spread across it. Dead and dying line the paths and choke the streams. Many are saying it is punishment from the gods. Journal of Adelantado Perez.
Sikin!
The people of the Andes have been perfecting the art of weaving for thousands of years. This chuspas is a wonderful example, woven of llama or alpaca hair and traditionally used to carry cocoa leaves. It clearly highlights the weaver's skill. Beautiful. This figure must be the Owl, the mythological beast stalking the outskirts of Paititi. Any squad venturing outside Khan must take special precautions in covering their tracks. We're close now, and the last thing we need is droves of tourists showing up trying to be the first to get the perfect selfies in the city. We found their hidden city easily enough, the coordinates from Trinity being correct. The natives did not trust us, and we entered the city with spears at our necks. There was a tumult against the people. We later learned a cohort of Inca had arrived the month before. Lopez spun a tale of our desertion from the Spanish army, for our hearts could not fathom the destruction they had and would continue to cause, and we gladly exchange any or all of our goods for shelter, if only for a short while. Reluctantly, they allowed us to remain in the city, on the condition we leave our armor and weapons in a small hut outside of the city proper. The men hesitated, and finally we agreed that 2 of us would remain outside, guarding the gear. How can these shapes be Incan when they look like airplanes? Oh, I see, they're insects of some sort. Archaeology is a very delicate field of study. You have to put yourself in the mindset of people and cultures who died centuries before you were even born. Humans interpret strange phenomena based on what they already know. If the Inca had seen planes, they might have assumed they were some sort of bird. Given that, these shapes may not be insects after all. Some of them look more like fish. This describes something nearby. Canals bring water to the arid parts of the village, and they washed me away. Gotcha! Amaru returned for his brother's funeral, inconsolable during the burial and immovable after. The next day, however, he cut swiftly through the city. He unmasked the cult's leader, exposing them as outsiders. "It is time for the people of Paititi to take control of their city," he said, holding a decapitated head in one hand and the bloody knife in the other. "No longer will we bow to outsiders."
Sima. Hachin wale ke main waltech, mish humel bal, putz te jaboba. Kesh yo la ilia tal me yaje, ganagmatic chen, bal.
This describes something nearby. The waters below protect me from the waters above.
I've been staring at this thing all day. It's trying to say.
This describes something nearby. A once ferocious warrior, raised as a warning. I fell from his mouth and now lie beneath him. Gotcha! They have several sites all over South America. Wish I'd found this map sooner. I could have gone directly to Paititi. Dressed in native garb, we entered the city. Those healthy enough to resist our advance met us with spears. We bowed and told them Kukulkan had sent us to cleanse the city of sickness. We administered balms and medicine to the city's leaders and those we thought worth saving, buried the dead, and comforted the dying. Slowly, the people came to trust and soon rely on our aid. As ordered, we have made our way to Khan in search of the suspected traitor Andres Lopez, accompanied by a squadron of native warriors. We'd found them along the shores of the Gulf after they had recently escaped a slave ship that was caught in a storm. The initial encounter was tense, but soon we came to an accord. The warriors agreed to accompany us through the jungle on the condition we made a detour to several other outposts to enlist more of their people and that we would keep them from being enslaved. We found that altogether satisfactory and soon set off. Alfonso Ricci, Order of Trinity. The ruling family is displaced, reduced to nothing but a figurehead while we truly control the city. The reason for allowing them to remain in position of seeming power is twofold. It allows us to focus on our search for the silver box, and it acts as a pacifier for the locals who are recalcitrant to any type of change. Villager claims to have seen a strange creature in the streets. They followed it to a walled-in alley where it disappeared. Citizen describes similar experience in Upper City. Woke to discover something trying to climb in a second-story window. When she yelled, it dropped to the street and disappeared. We'll continue to monitor. Impossible. I can't carry anymore. This describes something nearby. 7 golden birds perched here and there. One escaped to the trees with his treasure, dropped from his talons. I'm waiting for you.
Le coyote, hop uman tu pach le tulo, vale, le tie.
Paten pun le coyote, kuman tu pacho.
Bello pachu. Le tulo kuchte akakbal. Kau uyo helili.
Se pensasse nisso. Ah! Villa Witch! Inishkik!
Found you. A ceremonial whistle used during human sacrifices. The sound emitted from the skull-shaped instrument has been compared to the tormented screams of the dying and the dead. Its shrill cry is said to clear a path to the underworld for the recently deceased. The death whistle has also been used as an instrument of war, its cry striking fear into the heart of the unknowing enemy. Having not heard from Lopez, some among the leadership began to have their doubts about him. Our group dispatched south to investigate. We sent the natives in first, uncertain those in the city had not killed Lopez on his arrival. They returned with reports of how sick the city was, and we quickly formed a plan to utilize this to our advantage. This elaborate pipe is sculpted to resemble Xicuatl, an Aztec serpent spirit painted in green, blue, and yellow. Its sides are decorated with semi-precious stones. The inclusion of jade indicates at least a measure of Maya influence. The bowl still reeks of burnt roots and smoke, not an entirely unpleasant aroma. The Inca use a combination of freeze-drying and salt to preserve just about anything edible. Charqui and chunos are basically meat and potatoes. Delicious. This describes something nearby. The youngest of four turns his back on his brothers, unable to speak as I lie in his mouth. At last. The cult of Kukulkan has gone too far. The time to strike is now. They push, and all we do is take another step back. If Unuratu is unwilling to do anything, then we should move forward without her. This garishly decorated fire drill appears to be a part of the new fire ceremony, an Aztec celebration of the new year. It consists of 5 days of fasting, bloodletting, and sacrifice. The fire drill is meant to be placed upon the chest of the freshly sacrificed. It sparks, feeding a large bonfire that ignites the flames of every nearby temple. This one, however, doesn't appear to have been used, as the notches are clear of blood. Kukulkan departs Paititi during new moon. Kukulkan returns, with several other outsiders, during the waxing of the moon. They argue. The next morning, the entire group, now in better spirits, leaves in their obsidian birds.